All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video looking at the Stanley Cup Finals between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers. Got Gav joined alongside for today, and I don't think really anyone, no one thought this was ever going to be the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, looking at kind of how the bets were, obviously everyone was very heavy on Boston, Edmonton, Toronto.
Yeah.
No one, even Vegas being the one seed the one seed in the West.
Yeah, the one seed in the West. I think some people were a bit on Vegas. It's definitely more everyone was on Edmonton. Edmonton and Boston were the two clear favorites. Yeah. I think the contrarians maybe some of them wanted to fade Vegas, but then there was a couple people that just faded the Oilers or faded the Stars and had them in their bracket. But the brackets this year were kind of March Madness-esque, really. They were so unpredictable. I haven't seen one correct bracket out there. No, I have not seen a bracket.
No way. There's no way someone has a perfect bracket to this point. Considering there was the Boston upset there, Seattle beating Colorado too in the first round.
Yeah.
That just never would have happened. But looking at these two teams, I think I was saying it to you before. I think people have maybe warmed up a little bit to Florida because Matthew Tkachuk. Well, I know obviously being a Leafs fan, it's obviously tough to kind of hop on that bandwagon. But Tkachuk's been really exciting and Bobrovsky's been incredible. And Vegas on the other hand, they're just I don't think there's too many people who are jumping on the Vegas bandwagon at this point, right? If you're jumping on either bandwagon, you're going with the more kind of fireworks team, which would be the Panthers.
Yeah, I think
Vegas is just they're fucking boring.
Yeah, I think you're kind of just going off storylines too and narratives a little bit. Vegas is frustrating because I'm a Leafs fan and they've been in the league, 6-8 years? They've had way more success than I've ever seen in my life. So that's a bit frustrating to me. And then Florida, it's I don't know, they've been kind of irrelevant for a while, but it's such a storybook feeling for them right now. We saw with the LA Kings, the 8 seed, they weren't truly an 8 seed really. It's a 1v8 matchup, but I wouldn't say it's that at all.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody this week, another Habs fan, and I was like, oh, this seems like the team of destiny in my with Florida, and he was like, yeah, I thought Montreal was a team of destiny, and they got absolutely clubbed in the Stanley Cup final. So I don't think these teams are the same. They're probably having a goalie experience similar, but their actual players playing in front of their goaltender are
it just shows you too
better.
How much luck goes into these Stanley Cup playoffs. Even in round one, Boston, Florida, overtime Pasternak rips a shot off the top of Bobrovsky's stick. So many different bounces. Marchand breakaway. Omar giving the puck away. So many
goal
things.
That got called back, the hand pass. You remember that? It was super finicky. Yeah, and the same exact thing. Even talking about the team of destiny with Montreal, there's a bunch of things in each of those series that they won that was kind of a factor in it. It's definitely Cinderella-esque right now for Florida, but going into a much different, I would say, style of game here. You have two teams that are very different. You have Florida all season long was very good at creating offense, and then Vegas all season long very good at suppressing it and kind of stifling these solid offenses that they've played in the West, and even when they've crossed over to the Eastern Conference, a defensive core that's a lot more experienced. They're very balanced, they're long, they're tall. But if you look at the numbers, Vegas in this playoffs has been the better offensive team if you're looking at how many goals they've been producing. They have the highest shooting percentage in 5-on-5 at 12%, and they're averaging the most goals per 60 at above 3 in 5-on-5 play, which no other team in the playoffs has gotten to that point. Their goal differential is plus 25, which is
that's
insane.
Absurd.
And Florida's is plus 6, and that's the team that trails them in second. So do you think this is going to, because I've kind of said this each playoffs or looking at it each playoffs, do you think this is going to change now against Bobrovsky? Because they've played good goalies, but have they necessarily been playing well at that moment? It's tough to say. And I don't want to say it's necessarily Vegas's style that's driving these goalies to play poorly. Sure, Skinner's shitty, but Hellebuck didn't play well, and Ottinger was
Audie ended up with the worst numbers in the playoffs with a minimum of 7 games or something.
Going into that series, 100%. So do you think the Bobrovsky factor, highest goal saved above expected at plus 20, which is insane. Do you think that will have a factor in stifling maybe Vegas's super efficient offense to this point in the playoffs?
To me, it's hard to say because both teams are due for regression. Vegas is converting at such a high rate. I think they have 14 more goals than expected right now. So they're just burying on their high danger chances. They're high danger shooting percentage right now is 32.5%. So 33%, like that is 3 times more than any team that played in the third round, which is insane. And then obviously Bob is playing lights out. Like truly he is the only reason they're there. They're still a good team, but like he's single-handedly won them a bunch of games. So I'm not really sure on the balancing act of that because both teams are due for regression and there's had this layoff. Like there's a lot to talk about that. Like does it mess with the mojo? Because the Panthers have not looked back since they won game 5 against the Bruins.
Pretty much. They've lost one game.
They've lost one game since then, but now they have this layoff.
Yeah.
And is that going to mess with the mojo?
Exactly.
Like,
that's a good point too.
It's so tough. Like it's hard for me to say that Bob isn't going to keep doing what he's doing because I didn't expect that against Carolina. Yeah. I didn't really expect it against the Leafs, and he's proved me wrong every time. And then Vegas is just converting at such a high rate. Like, can he keep doing this? Like, I don't know. And like Florida does allow chances, so if they're there, like I guess we'll see.
Yeah, they definitely allow more chances than I would. Dallas probably better defensively than Florida, but Edmonton, like I would say, similar, and you know they were able to navigate them better. But again, you have the Bobrovsky factor, and I think one thing that's good to note for in terms of regression, like Vegas's whole team, I think is overperforming right now. For Florida, it's really just their goalie. So if they really get their offense rolling, like against a goalie like Adin Hill, like I know everyone's kind of underestimated him the whole time, and he's been really solid and given really no reason to not believe in him at this point going into the playoffs. I think that's a factor because they can. We've seen Florida put up a ton of goals. That's in certain points of the regular season, maybe not this playoffs, but certain points of the regular season. So if they get that going, it'll be interesting. But I think, like you were mentioning, I think rust could be a factor here. Like Bobrovsky, 10 games off, I think, 10 days off between games. Like that's a pretty hefty.
That's a long layoff, and it's a long period of time to just kind of stay in that zone because when you're playing every other night, like that's all you're thinking about, right? But maybe some demons creep into his head a little bit over this layoff. It's so tough to say. Yeah,
very tough. But looking at the odds for the series, so Vegas is favored. Like they have home ice advantage here. They're favored -125 at DraftKings. If you want to sign up at DraftKings, great offer right now. Bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets for the Stanley Cup Finals. So Vegas favored at -125, Florida +105, and then looking at some of the spreads for this, Florida to win at -1.5 for the series spread is +195, and then Vegas +160 in that same number at -1.5. So for our playoff predictions, I think we've done pretty well in predicting the games of how long these are going to go, and I think like there's been I guess there was a 4-game series and a 5-game series in the Eastern Conference the last
so maybe
2 rounds, so a little
shit.
bit shorter. No, but I'm saying like the games we had, like we said, like Seattle, Dallas, that was going to go 6 or 7 games. Yeah. We said this for Vegas and Dallas as well. So do you see this one? Like, do you think it's going to be 6 or 7 games? I hope so. I kind of just want to bet it because I want to cheer for it to go as long as possible because I just want hockey to be on.
I hope so. I missed the first round so much. I just want to see an epic series too. Like I don't want to see a sweep. I want to see it be a close. I feel like in both sports that are going on right now, NBA and NHL, like the Celtics made it interesting, but we kind of got a shitty conference finals for both sports. I think like definitely. None of them are really good. So I'm dying for a good final. I do see it going longer. I mean, there's one way where it could just be Vegas could just kind of steamroll them if Bob isn't good. So I think it could end in like 5 there, but I truly do see it going 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, I think Bob will stay locked in personally. And the one thing to do, I did a little bit of research, like looking at the Stanley Cup odds, these are like probably the closest series price we've had in like the last 10 years. If you think about the last like 4 years.
Yeah.
I think Colorado was heavily favored last year.
Yeah. They were like -200, right?
Tampa the last 2 years as well, like against Montreal. They're
like -400 probably.
And then who did they beat the first time? Did they beat Dallas the first time? Tampa?
Yeah.
So, and they were heavily favored against them because Dallas wasn't necessarily supposed to be there either.
Yeah.
So I think that in that sense, and the odds kind of indicated that it will be a longer series. So I'm picking Florida. I'm picking Florida because what we talked about, I think the shooting percentage for Vegas is too high. It's not sustainable. We've seen the Western Conference, and I know this Florida team is a really tough team to play. All season long, the Western Conference has been worse than the Eastern Conference. The Western Conference has struggled whenever they've gone over to the East and played. The only team that really actually played well against the East was Seattle. Vegas, we're one of those teams who didn't play too great against the Eastern Conference this year. I think Florida will be able to have their number. They're fast, they're quick, their forecheck is really good. If Aiden Hill, has 1 or 2 games where he isn't playing that great, Florida can definitely put in 4 or 3 goals to win. And then if Bobrovsky stays on this path, I mean, there's no way that anyone's going to be able to get, or they can't. If he's only allowing 1 or 2 goals per game, Florida's winning the series for sure.
Yeah, another stat too. Like Bob hasn't allowed more than 2, or he's allowed more than 2 goals once since the Boston series.
That is insane.
Which is just insane. But I'm on the same path as you. Like if you look at metrics, like Vegas 5-on-5 has been a better team. That's why the odds are the way they are. But Florida truly is the team of destiny, I think, right now. I kind of hope I mush them into oblivion because it pains me to say this.
Oh, it's good. You want the team to win the Stanley Cup, though, that beat your team. You want that because then you could say that.
That's like 5 years in a row now, right? So I'm not feeling any better about it. Yeah. But yeah, I think Florida is just the team of destiny, though. Like I bet against them against the Canes, bet against them when they played the Leafs. They've never been a favorite in any series yet so far. I might as well back them now. Panthers fans might be pissed about this. Maybe we're all going to mush them, but I really don't see a way that this story just kind of falls apart. Like it seems like it's already written.
Yeah, I agree. So that's good to see there. I think we both think it's going to go a little bit longer. Looking at like maybe just some of the players in some of those markets, because DraftKings offers some pretty solid ones for most goals, most points. Them and Caesars at BetMGM do a pretty good job of that. So most goals, Tkachuk and Eichel are the top 2 there. Points, same thing, kind of Tkachuk and Eichel. They have head-to-head shot props, I thought was actually really interesting. Tkachuk versus Eichel, and originally I was like, oh, Tkachuk for sure. But then I looked at last series, Tkachuk had like no shots, especially 5-on-5, and Eichel is like ripping puck like way more right now.
Yeah, that's the thing with Tkachuk. He's been like, he shows up in the huge moments. Like he had a point on every single game-deciding goal last series. Yeah, that's other than that, he was pretty invisible. And even against the Leafs, like he wasn't invisible, but he wasn't like, he didn't take over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty interesting market to look at. I'll be honest, there's one spot I'm looking at like a Hail Mary for most points. If Florida wins this series, I could see this guy definitely getting a couple like kind of easy assists on some of these goals, and then also just scoring a bunch because I thought he was really good in the series against Carolina. Anthony Duclair, most points, 75-1 for this series. He led the team in expected goals for last series in 5-on-5 play and all strengths, including on the power play. He plays on the second power play unit. He only had 1 goal and like 3 assists, so 4 points to show for it. But playing with Barkov, who really hasn't done much yet, like maybe he steps up here in the Stanley Cup Finals.
He's going to have to.
He's going to have to. He's playing on that line with Duclair, so he can get a couple assists there. And I think Barkov's just like, we've seen him turn players into incredible point producers, like Huberdeau being one of them. Yep. So maybe Duclair, catches some fire there. He also was second in individual high danger chances created in that last series as well with Sam Bennett. So I think he has enough chances, and the metrics are there that maybe believe in this. 75-1. Throw some fucking pizza money on it, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I like that. I've been kind of hesitant on like going in on any player props in the series because like I truly don't know how to feel about it.
It's like tough markets to. I mean, that's why the odds are so.
Like I really don't know if it's going to be a lot of overs or unders. Like their total goals in the series right now is set at 32.5. Like where would you lean on that? I kind of like the under.
I would kind of look at the under too, just because with the goalies, Bobrovsky, and then the way Vegas plays. These could be like 3-1, 2-1, 4-2 games like the whole time. If that's the case, it's going to go under there. It just depends, I guess, how long the series goes.
Yeah, if it goes 7, right? Like you got about like 4.5 goals a game to work with, kind of.
Really low scoring games. But that's an interesting market as well, for sure.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you lean the under there or over?
Yeah, I lean the under. Okay. Might be a bit square, I think, like an obvious thing, but no one's scoring on Bob right now. No, it's no one's scoring on him.
But yeah, you heard it here. Panthers are winning the cup. Some really interesting markets to bet, obviously, for this one. So many different and fun ways you can bet, especially at DraftKings. So be sure to check out that link in the bio. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.